Welcome to Wild Soul Gathering. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie, and I'll be your host for this episode of Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. Hello to all you wild souls out there. I want to send a special thank you to each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to join and listen to our guests as we discuss the many aspects of spirituality. To stay updated on our latest releases, please follow us, share with friends who may be interested, and if you feel so moved, a kind rating and review is always appreciated. In the tradition of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Hi, this is Dr. Sandra Marie, and I'll be your host for this episode of Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. Returning to the show today is Mark Robinson. Welcome back, Mark.
Great to be here, Sandra. Lots happened in the past couple of weeks. We need to get everybody up to speed.
We certainly do, and I have to tell you, Mark, I really had quite a response to that show. The listeners had a lot of comments and questions. I'm very energized by the responses that we received.
We didn't give some information last time because we weren't privy to it. Information is constantly flowing in, and I try and keep myself as updated as possible.
I agree. A lot has happened. Today, we're going to talk a bit more about Heaven's Cross, the spiritual New Earth timeline we are currently living in, and the interplay between biblical prophecy, astrology, science, and the spiritual community, including those on the other side that all seem to be aligning up right now. Mark, in our previous show, you said all these parts are coming together like a puzzle to put together an emerging world that we can't even imagine. Where would you like to start with all of that?
So let's start with the astrology bit of it. Pam Gregory kept saying that these astrological aspects had happened before, and she was predicting what would happen this time because of what has happened historically. But I now understand that, yes, the astrology is the same, but how it manifests is going to be quite different. And that's because our solar system is moving through the Milky Way galaxy. It's rotating around the center of the galaxy, just like our solar system rotates around our sun. And our solar system is now moving into a part of the galaxy that it has never been before. And the energy that the planet is receiving from this part of the galaxy is going to facilitate an entirely different outcome than historically happened with these astrological aspects. What that's going to be, I have no idea, but I intuitively feel that it's just going to amplify the possibilities of what may happen. So this time it is going to be the power of these aspects on steroids.
I agree with you. I'm very energized, a lot going on. It's definitely affecting everyone on the planet in different ways, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. To go back with Pam Gregory, the astrologer from the UK, I would say she really doesn't predict. She gives you heavy influences based on where the planets are, what they look like in the past, and what she's seeing happening.
It just makes me even more excited to live through this period and see what the outcome is going to be.
Since you brought up the planets, one of the things that I talked about is the interplay between the astrology, the spiritual work, the angelic beings, the people who are channeling other entities, our galactic world, all of the things that are beyond what we can see or touch at this point in time. I do want to touch a little bit about the science when you were talking about the solar system. I did want to talk about solar flares. NASA and the NOAA, the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration, which is the federal agency in the United States that monitors space weather. Unsure if you knew that we had an agency that did that, but you can follow it at spaceweatherlive.com if that's something that you're interested in. I wanted to talk about the solar cycles. Apparently, they started tracking solar cycles back in 1755, and we're currently in the middle or approaching the middle of solar cycle 25, which started in 2019. They usually last around 11 years, meaning this one was due to end in 2030. The maximum intensity occurring of these solar cycles is mid-cycle. So they were expecting that to be 2026, 2027, but in the last year, everything has suddenly accelerated, and now they're looking for maximum intensity to occur in 2023 and 2024, which I thought was pretty significant with all that's happening or due to happen with the astrology and with the opening of the heavens with Heaven's Cross. I thought that was pretty fascinating. As I've immersed myself into this, and I get into my head a lot, so I'm looking at the science of spirituality, the astrology, and how this all interplays together. And it really has turned into a bit of a crazy research project, I have to tell you. It's amazing. So I want to get into these different flares that are coming in the solar cycle. What solar flares are is they emit X-rays and magnetic fields that hit the Earth as geomagnetic storms. And if you have sunspots, there'll be more solar flares increasing the geomagnetic storm activities of the Earth. Apparently, there's 3 different classes of solar flares. You have C-class flares, M-class flares, and the strongest flares are the X-class flares. Each category is 10 times stronger than the previous class. Let's talk about the strongest ones, the X flares. What I found fascinating about this was in 2019 and 2020, there was absolutely no X flares. In 2021, there were 2 X flares, and in 2022, there were 7 X flares. Now we're in 2023, and just in the first 3 months, we have already had 7 X flares, which are the strongest ones that you can have. And my understanding is that there's been an increase in the M-class flares and the C-class flares also, which are increasing the geomagnetic storms and X-rays that are hitting the Earth. What's fascinating to me about all of this is how they're all weaving through each other, giving us similar messages and how the messages are interplaying. These are a huge amount of energy pouring into the Earth, affecting the electromagnetics. And as we know, we are very electromagnetic beings, meaning these surges of intense energy are affecting every single one of us. And there's more surges to come. In fact, I read yesterday, we're recording this on April 16, 2023, that there's 8 sunspots that are facing the Earth right now, which is upping the game. It's my understanding that the sunspots increase the solar flares. I find this all pretty fascinating. This is adding a different element and different dimension to everything else that's already happening. And all of these things are happening concurrently. Thoughts on this?
Well, it's often hard for me to wrap my mind around how this is all being orchestrated and who's doing the orchestrating. Sometimes I imagine this divine marionette with his strings attached to all these different components in the universe, and he's just manipulating them to put on this grand show of our transformation. I know that we live in a very energetic world. I know those solar flares disrupt our energy on Earth in many different ways. It's always visible in the aurora borealises at the 2 poles of the planet. So we know that they arrive and they have that effect. But it also can disrupt communications. Systems commonly go down when those solar flares hit. Again, you pointed out that, we are energetic magnetic beings. You can't help but think that they're affecting us as humans too. I don't know enough to discern what that may be, but I can assume with everything else that is going on that is going to amplify the transition that we're going through. And since it's affecting each and every human that's incarnate on the planet, not only is it happening on a level of geopolitical, economic, but it's also affecting each of us on a personal level. I can feel it in my everyday life, the tension that I'm feeling and how I'm responding to the dismantling of my own life and how things are changing. So yes, I think they're very significant and we need to keep track of them.
It's nice that there's organizations out there where you can actually track that every day. The other thing would be the Schumann resonance. We have talked about that on the show before. It's been running real high. I think that that's something that's important for people to understand, that as we're multidimensional and we're electromagnetic, all of these things are going to affect us, and it could come out of the clear blue and we could be like, what is happening?
Thank you so much for emphasizing that, because it's exactly what's been going on in my life. I'm having these emotional releases and responses, and I'm just handling it in ways that surprising. I've never reacted to this way before, and I'm making much different decisions about the directions my future is going to go in. So it is nice to have that explanation behind it.
Nice. That's nice.
I'm going to use that to segue back to that last week of March. After we recorded the podcast, I participated in that Heaven's Cross and got a good understanding of what that was all about. What I understand is that the veil is lifting for evolving souls on the planet, so they have a much stronger connection to the higher dimensions and the galactic. So as the veil lifts, it is raising our vibrations to a level that is uncomfortable to us because they have never been resonating so high. We all like to think that this magically is going to happen overnight, but this can only happen in increments so we as humans can assimilate it into our everyday experience and utilize it accordingly. This period of slowly awakening to the other side.
Oh, thank you for bringing that back up because we had a lot of response from the listeners about Heaven's Cross and what wasn't. We did the show before you and I had experienced it. Honestly, it came on our purview, I would say, a week or so before we did that show. So one of the things I want to clarify is I talked a lot about March 23rd, like I was really being pulled to the March 23rd. And the Heaven's Cross was on March 22nd. That is really the day that they talk about the apocalypse in the New World starting, not the 23rd. So when I went backwards to find out a little bit more about Heaven's Cross and what it was and how it came about, what I realized is that this is where we talk about everything working synergetically. Heaven's Cross, it's not an astrological event. The astrology had nothing to do with it. The event had specifically to do with humanity raising its consciousness. So a lot of what you talked about with the harmonic convergence, souls awakening, souls embracing that awakening, and the energy on the planet had finally hit a point where the event of Heaven's Cross, as you talked about, was a crack in the veil, an opening of the veil, heaven and earth opening, becoming one, however you want to language that. Thought that was interesting that they're two separate events. You and I attended an event led by a Geoffrey Hoppe who channeled Adamus St. Germain through a site called Crimson Circle. St. Germain shared that Heaven's Cross energizes and enhances the astrology. I did find it interesting, though, how Heaven's Cross did coincide and have some interplay with some significant astrology that was happening. So Heaven's Cross is different. I'll say different but not than the harmonics convergent as I know it. With the harmonic convergence, it's my understanding that that was an astrological event. You had explained it with the planets aligning, but there also was an elevating of the consciousness. The belief was 144,000 people needed to be meditating for peace to help facilitate their arrival and start of the new era, which in fact did happen in 1987, which set a lot of things in motion to get to where we're at right now in 2023. What I do want to say is they made it really clear that the Heaven's Cross, or the opening of the veil, the heaven on earth, is very individual and it's very personal.
I have a esoteric personal experience that I can share with you. Last week, I was at the gym waiting for my workout partner to do his set, and I was just standing there thinking about all of this, the veil opening and us working on other dimensions. I was standing there. The gym was pretty crowded. There was a lot of people, and I kind of let my perspective shift from 3D physical to more of an energetic fifth or sixth dimension. And for a brief moment, I would say about 20 seconds, everything shifted for me. I want to say visually, but it was so much more than visual. It was visceral too. But suddenly the three-dimensionality of the room disappeared and it became more auric, that I was seeing the separate auras from all the people and the machinery and the building, and it was all kind of blending together. Of course, as soon as you become aware of what's happening and you think about it, you're pulled back into the third dimension. So as soon as I thought, oh my God, this is a higher dimension experience, I was back into the gym as everything in the 3D world.
Wow, that is incredible. What an experience. And so you know you're going to have more of those. I love how you shared what happened when you pulled yourself out of it. I love that you shared what it's going to feel like living multidimensionally with an awareness and a consciousness. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I used in the title of that show the word apocalypse. The word apocalypse has been around for a very long time. It means to reveal and to open up. And it has taken on a different connotations that was brought into it by religious factions that just created a fear with it. The other thing that is interesting is in 2023, as this is all happening, is one of the years where you have Ramadan, Passover, Easter is all happening at the same time. I thought it was an interesting coincidence. And, whenever I say the word coincidence, I follow it with not.
I totally get that. Well, I think the word for the day is synergy. You used that several times. Yes, all these different systems, astrology, the sun flares, the heavens cross, are all coming together and working synergistically to facilitate this transition on the planet and for the human race.
We could take it even further than that with Gaia, the Earth, and the electromagnetics of the Earth. As this energy is shifting, our human bodies have to adjust to it. But on the Earth, we're also seeing the Earth being affected physically by this. I do believe that we have not necessarily been the best stewards of the Earth, but we are seeing a lot of earthquakes, and we're seeing a lot of massive water events and a lot of unusual weather patterns that are all happening during these same times, which is the Earth having a response to its transformation and its elevation in consciousness, and also its response to all this electromagnetic activity that is being hit and absorbed by it. That's part of that process.
Yes, Gaia is alive. It is a living entity, no different than each of the humans walking on it.
I'm interested that the equipment in the gym had an energetic liveness to it when you stepped over into the other dimension. Or am I misreading what you said?
No, that's exactly what I said, and it was part of the prize of the experience. Scientists with quantum physics are proving that we are all one thing. On a subatomic level, it's all the same stuff. We're no different than that machine. Of course, it would have that same effect when you look at it in a higher dimensional way. It's all just different levels of vibration.
Well, I guess it should make sense.
I suddenly got this picture of the machinery coming alive and walking around dancing.
Oh, my goodness. That's okay.
Not the case.
I love it. And I guess that should make sense to me and not surprise me, because I always know that the rocks and the earth and the dirt they're alive also. I'm obsessed with my rocks. Some of the other questions that came up with the heavens, we'll call it Heaven's Cross. And I do want to say not to be confused with Heaven's Gate. I know we were talking at one point and I started saying Heaven's Gate, which apparently there is such a thing. It's a Jim Jones sort of cult-like thing, if I'm not mistaken. So Heaven's Cross, make sure you Google the right thing. I had a panic moment when I was Googling Heaven's Gate and I'm like, this can't possibly be right. And it wasn't right because I had the wrong term. One of the things that I think it's really important to share with people out there is that this opening has happened and there's no going back. Don't humanize it and think that there's a time limit on it, that there is behavior that's associated with it staying open or not staying open. That's all fear-based, control-based kinds of things. The veil is opened, and it is open for an infinite amount of time. It will continue to open based on our conscious evolution and how ready we are for that to happen. There's nothing to be afraid of or have fear with it.
That's interesting. When I was doing my yoga last night, I started thinking or asking. I was asking the higher vibrational aspects of myself to more readily and quickly open me up to the other dimensions. And that was the first time I ever cognitively put those two things together, that I could consciously affect the process and the speed at which that would become available to me. It's all intention. And last night it just popped into my head to have the intention of working more and more on the higher dimensions. I have to make that one of my new affirmations.
That is very valuable because we do have to agree to allow it, and we do have to take a conscious effort into asking and being aware of it. You can't just sit on the couch and things will magically happen. You and I talk a lot about that. One of the things that Adamus St. Germain channeled when he was providing some insights into what this looked like was he strongly encouraged people not to ritualize it. He said humans love to create rituals when it comes to their spiritual growth, that actually creating rituals with it and ritualizing it will slow down our human evolution. Truly took note of that because that is something people in the spiritual community do love to do.
Yes, excellent point. It's not something that can be forced. It's something you need to allow.
Yeah. And I would say it's really important, even if you didn't participate in the Heaven's Cross ceremony. Most people didn't even know it existed on the planet. You didn't need to participate in a ceremony. You were gifted this. You just have to allow it.
Well, for everybody listening to these podcasts, it was like they were there because we are conveying the experience for them.
So I think it's important because a lot of times people think, oh my God, I missed out on this. I have to go find this. I have to participate in it. There's no special sauce that comes with it. What I find fascinating about all the interplay with this, as you know, I spend a significant amount of my waking hours listening to different people, reading, researching. And what's amazing me now more than ever is everything is paralleling and intertwining. So you can get that same information is coming through so many different conduits and so many different directions. You and I listen to different channelers, listen to different astrologer. All these messages they're all the same. And, science is intermingled in there and it's backing it all up.
I'm thirsty for it. And it's surprising how a different material just comes my way at such a timely fashion. There is some sort of intelligence behind this transition that just makes me happy to know that it's orchestrating all this. Again, that marionette up in the sky.
Yep. If
you can't avoid it.
No, you can't. And if it's what you want, you're going to be a magnet for it. Even if you don't know how to language it or exactly how to ask for it, there's no special words that need to be said. When you're a magnet for it and you desire it, like you said, it just happens to show up. Coincidence? Not.
Yeah.
Anything else with the Heaven's Cross? Or I believe that you also listened to Geoffrey Hoppe as he channeled St. Germain. Was there any other insights that you gleaned from that?
Yes, I did. I loved the aspect that we needed to take control of our own destiny. That as this window opened and we were rising to other dimensions, a lot of our perceived energetic helpers, I believe he referred to them as the angels, were vacating their positions and giving us the autonomy to move forward with this. The ball is definitely in our park now.
I'll share my story with that. When I did this Heaven's Cross, like I had no idea what this was going to be about. He said the angels were leaving the earth and they had this little ceremony for them all to line up. They had finished their work here and that they were moving on their way. Over the years, I've worked a lot with the angels and they've helped me. And I feel like the angels and I have this really close relationship. And I was sad about it. My experience as they walked by me, they had these wings and they were brushing them along my face saying goodbye. I called you because I was really upset. It was like losing a long lost friend. And it was like, we had been together for so long. Thank you so much, but I'm really going to miss you. And it was a bit of an emotional moment for me. That's what they said. We have elevated our consciousness, and it is time for us to take back the earth. And in fact, Gaia, we refer to Gaia a lot, but Gaia is leaving the earth. Gaia has got a new spiritual mission that she is taking on for her own evolution, and the earth is being handed back to us so that we're taking responsibility for this as elevated conscious beings of the planet. And what I came to realize is that the angels are going to interact with us on a fifth dimensional level. It's just going to look different. I guess we're taking responsibility and we're accountable, which when I first heard those words, I was had a brief moment of feeling terrified that the responsibility of the earth is being left to the humans. But I trust that there's more humans that are consciously awakening. And honestly, that's what we're saying. We talked about it. It's feeling great. It's exciting. It's going to feel mucky. We've got some uncomfortableness that's going to be intertwined with it. We've got this. We're good and we got it.
Yes, I was so focused on the outer world and how this was all going to affect our social institutions. I never really stopped to consider how it was going to affect me personally. And as you were sharing your ideas about the angels, I was just reminded of something. As you know, I'm a medical intuitive and I do healing energetically. And even that is evolving quickly, and my process and the way I approach it. In the past, I have assumed that I had a higher self that was kind of separate from me and was guiding me. And I would invite any energetic healers that may have been working with me or with my client to participate in guiding the healing. Well, 2 weeks ago, suddenly that didn't feel right. And I spontaneously, without really thinking about it, changed my verbiage as I was connecting with my energetic self to do this healing. And I found myself referring to all the different entities that come in to do a healing as higher vibrational aspects of myself. I'm embracing this information that I've had for at least 20 years, that we're all one. Why would this all be separate with different entities? Everything that is happening is all just a different version of me. In the big picture, I am, in fact, the oneness, the divine, the love. So I am now appreciating there are many aspects of my soul, millions of aspects, probably, that are all having incarnational experiences simultaneously, because time doesn't exist. It's all in this the magic moment of now. Suddenly I had this understanding that the energies that were helping me were just higher vibrational versions of myself, which was really empowering. After the session was over and I thought about it, and I thought, wow, that's really taking your power back, recognizing your ability and how that ability can affect yourself and those around you in a very positive way.
My God, that is so great. Sometimes I take these things for granted. That is an amazing aha moment, truly, Mark. And that is part of this Heaven's Cross in the opening of the veil in this Earth game we play, right? It's the Earth game, the third dimensional, time and space, both the same thing. Most people, consciously or unconsciously, are clearly feeling time collapsing. Sure, all one, been in on that game for a long time, felt it with my heart and soul. Do a lot of work, just as you started talking about, with your causal soul, your oversoul, your higher self, all of these different pieces, parts of us that I'm aware of. And I do agree in this incredible sacred geometry, energetic being that we fall into on this earth plane. It always felt separate. Recently, some of the conversations that I've had and some of the work that I've done, I had my own different aha moment that now there's no separation. There has always been that separation, even though we have known that we're all one. And this opening in the veil is what has removed the separation so that we truly have all become one. If you were going to ask me, what does this crack in the veil mean? What does this opening? What does heaven on earth all mean? We talk about we're all one. We're all one with the tree that I'm looking at outside my window and my beautiful rock formations that I always have been energetically connected to. We're all one, but we were never all one within ourselves. So I love that you share that story because that's a huge aha.
As you were talking, you framed it just as I was thinking it in the moment. Oh my God, what you and I are experiencing or have experienced in the past couple of weeks is examples of the veil lifting. That's exactly what it was. I just suddenly I looked at something in a higher dimensional way, and without even thinking about it, I just vocalized it. That's because the veil's lifting for us.
Yeah,
Wow. Talk
nice.
about an aha moment in the
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this actually answers some of the questions that I was getting from people who were listening to the show. People I think they're very hungry for what does this all mean? We can say the words and talk about it, but it's like, what does it mean? And you've been on this train for a long time. I've been on the train for long enough, decades. I mean, obviously, we're just having these aha moments.
Yeah, it's it's beautiful. I love it. Suddenly I feel like I've just done some major drugs. I am buzzing really high. I love it.
This is what we've waited for. This is what all these prophecies, all of this ties together and comes
Do you
together.
know, I have just recently heard that all the predictions from the Bible, from Nostradamus, from other sources have all played out. It's all ended. From this point on, there are no material that's predicting what's happening from this point on. I thought that was pretty amazing. Kind of like all the indigenous calendars ending in 2012.
Wow, that is incredible. So that's what I was just going to say.
We're definitely on the same wavelength today.
Yeah, definitely. However, you were climbing the mountain to get to the top, whatever these different belief systems or paths that different individuals have followed or that people have studied, they all play together, they all intersect. And this is the moment that everyone's waited for. Like the moment has happened. It amazes me that people think they've been looking for this moment like it was going to happen, but they seem shocked that it would actually happen or it could happen in their lifetime, right? So the moment had to happen sometime. You guys have been talking about it literally for eons, truly eons, thousands and thousands of years. Again, I'm going to go down this path. The moment has happened and we get to be here for it. And we are playing a huge role in it. Like this is so exciting to be a part of this and to be part of this transition. And I can't even imagine what's going to happen later today or tomorrow or down the road because this is just the beginning of heaven on earth.
Absolutely. Well said.
Knowing that both with prophecy, I believe, and with the astrology, when I was talking about the science and the energy flares, and things are truly excelling even from a scientific standpoint, keep hearing repeatedly 2023 and 2024 are definitely going to break down a lot of this, and we're going to see a new beginning and a rebirth. You talked about it in the last show. We talked a lot about destruction and reconstruction. It feels like we're just on the cusp of some significant deconstruction that might move a little faster. And we're definitely energized about the reconstruction and what that looks like. I think that there's absolute consistency about what that's going to look like with that. I do think we have a lot of power in the game. A lot of people are going to feel powerless. Even ourselves will have moments of that. You had talked last week where you had a moment with watching the news and it was not amusing to you and you were sort of rethinking how that was affecting you. What kind of spiritual tools are you using or do you use to get you through these types of situations?
Well, you can have the tools, but it doesn't necessarily play out like you would like to. I made that comment last week that I was having a negative reaction to the news and I needed to back away from it because you need to stay emotionally unattached. It ended up being more than just what was happening in the outer world. I was having some pretty negative emotional responses to things that were happening in my personal life. And I realized it was just more of a the energies shifting in me, and I was recalibrating to them. And in that process of recalibration, I needed to purge all this stuff. I have been doing yoga for the past, I can't even believe it, 30 years, morning and night. That definitely keeps me grounded, calm, and relaxed. Meditation always puts me in that blissful place of be happy. That has been my moniker for most of my life when I greet people, either coming or going. To stay in the positive and keep that positive vibration going, I do affirmations on a daily basis too. That always keeps me in a positive mindset, manifesting great things for the future. I always considered nature my church. Of course, my all-time favorite place is on a beach. Lucky me that I have manifested that. Just being on the beach and listening to the waves and just the birds and the dolphins just puts me in a very centered, calm place. When I lived in other places, I had the same effect walking through a forest or up a mountain. There's something very calming about Mother Nature. It has a very basic vibe to it, very peaceful vibe to it. And when you connect with that, it prevails all over your entire body. Meditation, yoga, affirmations, get out in nature as much as you can. And don't take yourself too seriously, because sometimes you just react the way you react and you need to let it go.
Wow, those are great words. I appreciate your honesty with that. For me, I get caught up in my head and I always have so many different projects going. I forget about that. And I have this beautiful piece of property that we're working on very diligently to get together to create a beautiful space for people to come and release and engage with their spirituality. And what I realize is sometimes I'm in the middle of painting or a home project and I don't even make it outside. My daughter was down here in January and she's like, you just need to start your day and go out for your walk first thing in the morning. I actually did that a couple of times and it was like, wow, this really has shifted my energies. I have put a very intentional focus on being out in nature, but also letting go of all those things in my head, my list of to-dos that I need to be doing while I'm walking. And I have what I think is a funny story. I was out there and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to be present and I'm going to enjoy nature. I'm just going to take advantage of it. And the butterflies are out and we have these blue birds. I have no idea what they are, but they're just this incredible color. I felt like, when you go to a baseball game or a soccer game and you have these little 6 or 7-year-olds who all of a sudden are twirling outside and chasing the butterfly instead of the baseball. Said I was mowing on the zero turn. And I got caught up with this butterfly and it was just amazing me and the colors. And I was watching it fly. And I had a bit of a little mower situation because I got so consumed with the butterfly and following it. But I have to tell you, I think that it was a moment that I need to be doing like all the time because it really just put me in a different place. It just let me appreciate existing on a whole different level. Those are important tools. So Mark, as you had mentioned before, I know you're a medical intuitive and that's a lot of the work that you do. How can listeners get a hold of you that may want to work with you with that or even just have a conversation with you?
Oh, just please connect me through my email. It's spiritquester, SpiritQuester @gmail.com. And I'll be sure to get back with you if we can set something up.
Such a perfect email for you. I love that.
I've had that email since the 90s.
Wow, beautiful. That's pretty cool. Any last words that you have for the listeners? Now, this is going to be a hard one, I think, because your last words for the listeners last time was so spot on and powerful. I'm not really sure how you're going to follow that up, but you're a special guy, and I know you got it in you.
Put me on the spot. I hope you love roller coasters. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. As always, you are just an amazing friend to the show. I always love having you on. And for all our listeners out there, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day. Continue to send your questions and your thoughts about the show. Embrace that wild soul. We've got some wild times coming up.
And for everybody out there, be happy.
Thanks, Mark. You have a great day. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us for this episode of Wild Souls Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To find out more about our guests, how to contact them, or detail on this episode, please see our show notes. You can also visit us at our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We would love to hear from our visitors what you thought of this show, what you would like to see and hear in the future, questions you may have. Go to podinbox.com/happy hour for the spiritually curious. You can leave either a voice or traditional message for us. This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.